When Steve Jobs was testing the prototype of the original iPhone, it actually had a plastic screen, and he scratched it. He was super mad in typical Steve Jobs fashion, and that led to the whole saga of trying to find a supplier last minute. They went to Corning, retooled the whole factory to produce actual glass for phones, and the phone shipped with a mineral glass. Now we have credible rumors about Apple coming out with a foldable next year that likely will have a plastic-like screen. And I wanted to talk about what does it mean for the company as a whole, what kind of foldable Apple will likely release based on incredible rumors, and where did the whole category came from, and could that be actually useful, and will it actually have any growth in the future? So let's do this. Foldable phones, they came out in the late 90s, early 2000s with Nokia. They had communicator series.
It's a mobile phone and email, the internet and a fax.
They didn't really catch on because they were super expensive. They were bulky. The weight was like 400 grams. And they were quite limited in what they could do at the time. And even though Nokia targeted business professionals, still, it was a very niche phone, and the smartphone, when it came out, totally killed the whole category of these phones. So then fast forward to 2019, Samsung came out with the first foldable, and before, this was roughly 2005, they started investing into flexible OLED R&D aggressively. They did some demos in 2013 with CES, and then in 2018, okay, we have a technology, we have a screen, we have it in the warehouse, maybe we should put it into the phone and see what it looks like, because smartphone as a category with a slab form factor, it was stale. There's not much to look forward to. There's not big advancement unless you could stick a massive camera or a massive battery. There's not that much changing year over year. So this whole design it was driven by technology being available first, not necessarily a user having an actual problem, which is typically how products are designed. Before we get to Apple device and why they're doing it, let's take a look at the numbers first. So this is the chart for foldable phones, and as we can see, 2019 until roughly 2023, there was not much growth happening because it was mostly Samsung until Chinese manufacturers Huawei and then Xiaomi joined. And interesting thing happened in 2024 when actually shipments decreased roughly by 10-11%. That was an interesting one, decline in Q3. And right now, where we are, it's about 1.5, 1.6%, and market is not really growing. So that's an interesting one, because if this was such a hot category, was such a big deal, everybody would want a foldable. That's not happening at all. We're not seeing that. That's not what the numbers are actually suggesting. And everybody is betting when Apple joins, the market will go up, and this will change the whole category. So why is it not growing as a category? Well, it's not just that we don't have a lot of players, there are fundamental issues with the design of the foldable. Hinges and all of this stuff is fine. We had laptops for years. This thing is super durable, and it's flexible, and it works real well. It's that when you're trying to bend the screen a couple 100,000 times, then that's where the problem shows up. Crease on the screen, plus it's very soft, it's almost like a plastic. Then you need extra care. Aspect ratio, super important. It's weird, like it's almost like a square. When you have a square, it's not very useful for movies. It's not as useful for games. And on Android, I mean, a ton of apps are not supported or they're not optimized. So you're just actually seeing less content with Instagram. At least that's what it was before, then you could actually see on the phone that would be optimized for a foldable experience. Then we have super high price. These things are $2,000 and more. And then camera is not as good because you have a lot less space. I mean, Samsung Fold 7, I think it's 4.4, 4.3 millimeters. That's pretty thin. Now, Apple, in their usual fashion, they will try to overcome majority of these things, and they will start with the aspect ratio. We've heard it will be roughly an iPad mini-like. We are looking at 7.8 inch screen, and this is where you could see, if we look at iPhone side by side with an iPad mini, there's a dramatic difference in how you view your content. And this is very likely what Apple will be showing in their demos, in their advertising, and in their examples. If the aspect ratio is selected correctly, it makes a big difference. Games, movies, photo editing, video editing, that looks a lot better than on a standard 6.9-inch iPhone Pro Max. Crease. We've heard Apple is about to solve it. We'll have no crease, but scratchability, what it would look like after you fold it many times, we'll need to see what happens. Apple will optimize, and I'm sure it'll look amazing, their apps, their software experience for the new aspect ratio with iOS 27. And I'm almost certain they will do unibody construction, the same they've done with the 17 Pro. So structural rigidity will be extremely good, far better than what we have seen with anyone else. But it's not all that sexy if you actually look into it, because if you nail the aspect ratio of the inside screen, the outside screen looks a bit weird. 5.5 inch, so it's going to be a little small, a little bit awkward, and a little squarish. No Face ID, so likely because of the thickness, we're looking at Touch ID experience, and then the camera likely will be around iPhone Air level unless Apple opts for a giant bump, which they might. I mean, we'll need to see. And odd design, and Apple will not overcome this. Every single foldable looks really weird because it has a redundant screen. Now here comes the biggest problem that I have with foldable phones, where I'm actually not sure, I really doubt it will grow massively over those projected 10% or 15%. And it's not really to do with the price or the experience that you're getting with the larger screen. It's with this.
You've got to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology. You can't start with the technology and try to figure out where you're going to try to sell it. And I've made this mistake probably more than anybody else in this room. It started with what incredible benefits can we give to the customer? Where can we take the customer? Not starting with, let's sit down with the engineers and figure out what awesome technology we have, and then how are we going to market that?
It's because we have started with technology in the warehouse. It's not a real fundamental user problem. I don't believe that is. It feels like Apple is following this flawed approach, and it's not like foldable phones suddenly is going to destroy the iPhone. Not going to happen, not even close. You have an iPad that is beautifully designed for one thing. You have an iPhone, and then you have the MacBook. Having a device that does all of these things, it's good in theory. And of course, we'll see what Apple releases. Apple is by far the best in terms of hardware. They're really good at software. Let's see. But it doesn't feel right. Now, another really important thing that Steve Jobs have said is when he was introducing an iPad. Let's take a look.
In order to really create a new category of devices, those devices are going to have to be far better at doing some key tasks. Things like browsing the web, doing email, enjoying and sharing photographs, video, enjoying your music collection, playing games, reading ebooks. If there's going to be a third category of device, it's going to have to be better at these kinds of tasks. Otherwise, it has no reason for being.
So is this new screen that the foldable will have a far better at doing photos, videos, gaming, media consumption? And we know that smartphones are all about media consumption. It probably is. And so if we look at it as a different category, foldable phones, it actually does that. Yeah, it will be much better at photos, videos, media consumption, which most of the smartphones are used for these days. So it does matches that, but it compromises durability, aesthetics, camera, quality, scratch resistance, and all of these things. And it does feel like it's trying to do too many things at the same time. Here's why I believe Apple is doing it. I don't think they're solving a user problem where we really need this big screen. I think they're going for the money. I think they're going for two things: market share, to sell devices and actually make substantial amount of money. They want to, because the cost of the foldable phone will start at $2,000. Apple, in their usual fashion, they will add a few options for memory, and then you're looking at $3,000 plus phone, which is great. It's really, really high margin device. The iPhone as a category is not growing. And the worst part is even when Apple makes a substantially really good update, like they've done with 17 Pro and 17 Air, people are still skeptical because their perception of Apple has changed. They look at, hey, this thing looks the same for years and years and years. And they actually didn't even understand that 17 Pro is a tremendously cool product. And the perception is reality, and that's a real problem for Apple. If we could make it look like innovation, satisfy our really, really users that want this big screen, that's good. That's how Apple is thinking, I believe, right now. And I don't have a data for this right now, but Apple is actually losing share on the Chinese market. And this is where their growth is coming from. This is where they want to be competing. Huawei, Xiaomi, those guys, they want to have something to compete with. And Chinese guys, they want the big screen. Asian love big screen. So let's make the big screen. That's how Apple is thinking. So very pragmatic business perspective. Now, many people have said this, but Apple has changed. And they've changed years after Steve's death. And we've seen it with the release of Apple Watch that didn't have a killer app, and Apple wasn't sure how to position it. Eventually, we got to the fitness thing. Then we had the Vision Pro that Apple was showing as this big revolutionary thing that nobody really is using right now. And there were a lot of employees at Apple that were not happy, or they were uncomfortable with the product being released in the first place. We had AirPower that wasn't released, and right now we had a lot of issues with software that Apple allegedly demoed. Vaporware with context-aware Siri that actually never got released a year later, and we still don't have that release. That's super dangerous. And Foldable, it's one of those things that you take a winning formula, you unfold it, and you put massive brain of Apple's hardware design team on it to see if they could fix the problem. And let's see what happens. If they can do it, great. If they don't do it, it'll go the way that iPhone mini went. The plastic phone, the iPhone 5C, and everything else that didn't really sell well. And that's the modern Apple. It's not dead. It's not dying. And the foldable phone will not make it go dead, like many people said. And I have thought about that myself. And look, they absolutely can bounce back. But the danger is when all these little slips are happening for a very long time, and that becomes actual culture. And what I'm worried about is Apple software more than their hardware division, because with their recent release of the iPhones, of AirPods Pro, Apple has proven again that they are number one in the world in designing superior hardware. But their software decisions, iOS 26, macOS Tahoe, and Liquid Glass design language are very concerning because they go for the looks, they degrade user experience, and they try to put platforms that are actually very different, iOS and macOS, into the same thing. And that's dangerous. But in terms of the foldable, yeah, we'll have to see. That's the modern Apple. Thank you guys for watching. Consider adding us up for similar videos like that. I'll be talking about Apple executives. The next one will be about Phil Schiller. There's an interesting story about him. And I'll see you in the next one. I want to take a moment to say it's unbelievable how forward this phone was, how much ahead of its time it was back when it was released. It's incredible. It feels in the hand, and just the responsiveness is unreal. No wonder it became the most successful consumer device ever made.